We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kathy Peregrino, and I would like to welcome everybody here. It is so good to hear or to see so many people that are interested in the topic of water in our community. I'm a member of the Coalition for Responsible Data Center Development. 1 year ago, I lived about a half mile from where the Farmington hyperscale data center is scheduled to be built. Since then, I've moved about 7.5 miles away, but remain very active with the coalition. Why? Because the Jordan Aquifer that supplies our water does not have boundaries. The resulting air pollution, soaring electricity costs, and environmental degradation will affect everyone in this community and beyond. It's important that people understand the impact on all of us. Tonight,
We did it on purpose.
oh, okay. Tonight we have two special guests, Janelle Kuznia and Veda Kanitz of Elko New Market, who will share their community's experience with the Niagara project, a large water user. You will hear how the project came to town, what followed for nearby residents, and where the community's fight stands today. And you will see how the situation in Elko New Market parallels the situation we are experiencing here in Farmington. So here's what we are going to do this evening. We've got our speakers. I'll introduce them in just a second. We'll talk about after that where we are at with our lawsuit, and then after that there will be some time for Q&A. So now I would like to introduce you to our two special presenters. Janelle Kuznia is a citizen advocate from Elko New Market who has become a recognized voice in the fight to protect local water resources amid concerns over the Niagara bottling project. She has testified at the Minnesota State Capitol, speaking directly to lawmakers about community water concerns, coordinated local well water testing clinics to test for contaminants and educate local well owners, and has been featured in news coverage highlighting the local opposition movement. Her work reflects determined grassroots leadership focused on protecting long-term water security. And next we have Veda Kanitz. And Veda is a retired high school science teacher, climate reality leader, former Citizens Climate Lobby member, past chair, and one of the founding members of the DFL Environmental Caucus. She received the DFL's Willard Munger Award for Distinguished Environmental Stewardship in 2020. Her love of the natural world and desire to leave a healthy environment for her children and grandchildren inform her life's work. So let's give a warm welcome to our presenters.
Forgive us while we switch technology here.
There we go.
And it worked when we tried it out, so it will work now, right?
Fingers crossed. This is what happens when you go from a Mac to a PC. Or PC to a Mac.
Getting there. This window and near this.
Woohoo!
Thank you all for coming. Can you hear me? Or do I need to get a little closer?
Closer to the mic.
Great. My name's Janelle Kuznia. I live in New Market Township near the Niagara water bottling plant. Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. Myself and Veda have been very active, or were very active and still are very active in the fight against Niagara in our community. We've had a lot of issues that have happened with our local wells, and we'll talk about that tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Veda and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Veda Kanitz. I first met Janelle over this whole project, the Niagara, fighting it. And we became good friends, and she is now serving on the Environmental Caucus Board that you heard about with me. I'm a mom and a grandma and a retired teacher, and understand that we need to protect our water. We need to conserve it for future generations. And so we're really happy to be here tonight to kind of share our story and hope that it will help you with your fight here in Farmington to protect your water and resources.
So just like you, in Elko New Market, long before the community knew what was going on, the plans to build or bring in Niagara began. In 2020, our city council annexed in 130 acres from New Market Township, and they annexed it into the city very quietly. They pulled water and sewer out to this property. This property is not connected with the city proper, so it is completely surrounded by New Market Township and is actually on the east side of the freeway. So no one in the township was paying attention to what was going on. It was COVID, and most of these meetings happened online. The city council was discussing bringing in a large water user to take care of their water fund problems that they were having. So most of this happened in 2020 and 2022. In 2022 in March, the city approved an AUAR for an industrial project, and this AUAR did not mention a large water user. However, a few months later, they gave a hypothetical to the city council, actually the engineers gave a hypothetical to the city council indicating if they were to bring in a hypothetical large water user, what it might cost the city. They were anticipating $6.9 million in structural costs to the city, and they were and also anticipating that their water funds would be taken care of. Shortly thereafter, 30 days to be exact, the developer made application, and Niagara was now in front of the city council. This is the first time that actually most of the residents knew anything about it. We, at that time, we didn't know anything about it, and Bring Me the News actually broke the project. That's how we learned about it. And 30 days later, they set a planning commission meeting for a public hearing on whether or not this project should be moved forward. Just click this forward. This is a picture you can see of the actual industrial park that was approved through the AUAR. The yellow is the proposed data center. The red arrow is where I live. And the city is actually west of here 1.5 miles. So it is not connected to the city at all. And so for us as township residents thinking, why would we have an industrial park in our backyard, or why would we be paying attention to what's going on in the city was a little bit shocking. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Proposed water bottling plant. I'm so sorry. In some ways, it's the same thing. Yes. When Niagara made application, the city was pumping 135 million gallons of water a year, and Niagara was wanting 165 million for phase 1 and another 165 million for phase 2. And the city agreed to sell the water for half the price that the citizens were paying for it to Niagara. So. On November 29th of 2022, the Planning Commission held their public hearing for rezoning and the conditional use permit. The community showed up, we packed the room, we gave our concerns, and the Planning Commission said yes to everything. We asked for it to be laid over so that we could learn a little bit more about it, and of course those decisions had already been made, and so it went on as they had planned.
So Janelle didn't waste any time. She went out and talked to experts on environmental issues, geologists, and put together a petition with help from others that we circulated. This is where I met her. I went to Organic Farmer's barn where they sell produce, and she was getting people to sign the petition. And I took it out in my neighborhood. All 20 of my neighbors out in the country signed it, no problem. And it was basically saying, you know, we need you to slow down. We need you to look at, will this impact our water here? We're all well users. Out in the country, we have farmers that need to have water for their livestock. And we have a trout stream and other things that we want to protect. So we were very concerned. So in very short time, 48 hours, we got over 400 signatures. And the online petition that we also did, I had what, over 2,000? I mean, it was quite a bit. So the petition basically said that, you know, we were concerned, we wanted there to be a study done on environmental review, not just an AUAR, to see if this was going to impact our water table, to see if it was going to impact the surface waters, the Vermilion River, and also thinking about climate change with drought and other things, flooding, everything that's going on with our weather these days. Would it be sound to do? And the community came out. Many of you in the room, I know, joined us as we went out in frigid weather and protested before meetings. This was in December, and again later. We showed up outside in the cold, and people presented to the council their concerns. There was a public hearing on the grants. But subsidies had been promised. So in order to attract a large user for this industrial park that they had already put in and spent money on, they were making promises. Promises that made a lot of us very upset. You helped pay $405,000 through a 10-year zero-interest forgivable loan for job creating funds. For the city sewer and the city water connection fee were reduced. So it was basically $3 million that they didn't have to pay. So there was a lot of concern about this. They did table the project until a decision was made on the environmental review, however. So everything is still moving forward. They just didn't do anything else at that point. During this time, though, they did apply to the DNR to modify the water appropriation permit. The city would need to basically double the amount of water that they were allowed to take from the aquifer in order to build this, to allow Niagara, right, to use the city's water.
So you can see the large aquifer that we're all using. 83 municipalities rely on this aquifer in the 7-county metro area. The Prairie du Chien Jordan supplies water to a lot of people in the Midwest. And so we were very concerned about water conservation, how this would affect the water supply in the future. What if the drought worsened? We were in the middle of a drought at the time. And what about regional planning? I'll show you on the next slide, there is a website on the DNR's page, or on the DNR's page, there's a link to all the permits that are in the state of Minnesota, everyone that's permitted to pump water out of the aquifer. And it also tells whether or not these cities and or local individuals, whether it be a farmer or a business, are overpumping their permitted amount. And at the time, there were several cities that were at their limit or over their limit in the amount of water that's pumping. And what I can tell you is that when the DNR is looking at the appropriation permit, they're not looking at what's going on in the region. So regional planning is a huge piece that we were concerned about. We were concerned about the impact about water quality and quantity to our wells. We were concerned about the impact to the Vermilion River and the watershed. What about the trout stream? If we pull this much water, is there still going to be cool water for the trout to survive? We were concerned about the impact of the plastic to the environment. Along with this project, there are 3 huge silos, filled with little plastic beads that I can see from my front steps of my house now. So what if those plastic beads get into the environment, the animals, etc.? We were concerned about the financial impact to the residents of Elko New Market and also to the well owners in the area. The financial impact to the people that live within the city limits. For phase one, the city needed $6.9 million in infrastructure upgrades. The city of Elko already has the third largest water rates in the state. And now they're talking about adding $6.9 million, which would ultimately be, the city citizens would be responsible to pay that. And 2 years later, when they gave the numbers again to add phase two, the price tag for that is between $15 and $25 million. They can keep it at $15 million if they degrade the quality of water for the citizens of Elko New Market. So they're going to mix raw water with treated water. They'll still be within the state standards. However, they will not be receiving the same quality of water that they had been receiving. And of course, for those of us that lived near the project, we were concerned about noise, traffic, and light issues. So this is a little bit about the regional planning, as I was speaking about. In 2021, Lakeville, Burnsville, and Empire Township all exceeded their permits. Elko New Market, Prior Lake, Rosemont, and Shakopee were close to their limits. And the overuse threatens the future water supply and the protected and our protected surface waters. And just as for Farmington is on here, at the time, and I think this still might be true because I checked it, Farmington was permitted to pump 1 billion gallons, and in the year of 2021, they've used 824 million gallons. So they're close to their permitted amount as well. And I'm not exactly sure about the details, but I have heard that the data center may need 2.9 million gallons. Is that correct, Mo?
That's correct.
So that would be another billion gallons. So that means that Farmington's going to need to modify their appropriations permit. They're basically going to have to double their permitted amount. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, about what that's going to look like. So.
So Janelle talked about our concerns about sustainable use of water. And one of the reasons that we were concerned was this study. In 2016, the Met Council did a study that looked at the impact expected to the water table for the metro region here, the South Metro region. And you can see Lakeville is on there also, as well as Apple Valley and Burnsville and Savage. And basically what it said is if we continue to pump at the rate that we are expected, that it will go down up to 40 feet by 2040, and that some of these communities are going to have to look for another water source. So if you're right next to the Minnesota River, that's not quite too difficult. You can take water from the river and clean it up and drink it. But we're not that close here, are we? Nor is Lakeville. So that would be a huge expense. As a well owner, I'm concerned that if the city is increasing their rate of pumping, that my well might go dry, that I might have to dig a deeper well. And this has happened. Janelle, I think we'll talk about it a little later, but there were people who their water stopped when the city did their pump test. They didn't have water. We're also concerned about surface waters. The farmers need to make sure there's good surface water, right? Recharging the wetlands and helping to keep their crops in good shape. But there's also that trout stream we talked about, right? That we want to make sure it's getting adequate water supply. So Lakeville had done a multi-aquifer test in 2017 to see what happened if they increased their pumping rate from one of their city wells. And the results showed that it did, that there was drawdown of the stream. And this is pretty alarming, because if you look at the geologic maps, it looks like they're taking water from a confined aquifer, which means there's an impermeable layer of clay, and that if they're going down with their straw under that impermeable layer of clay, that it shouldn't be affecting our wells, our water that's above that, okay? But this study showed that it's not totally impermeable, that there's leakage, that there's flow of water between the lower aquifer and the higher aquifer, between the Prairie du Chien and the Jordan, and also into the surface features. So again, are we going to lose our trout stream if we keep pumping more and more water from this aquifer? Now, they said where we're at, it's not a trout stream. In Elko New Market, we're the headwaters, so it's very shallow, but it's groundwater fed. And it's that cold groundwater that helps to keep this trout stream a trout stream. If we lose that, surface water is much warmer, it also has a lot more pollutants in it, and that is a big issue. I took students to study the Vermilion River right here in Farmington. We went over to Rambling River Park for many, many years, and it was the highlight of my teaching career, okay? So I have a connection to that river too. But again, this all where you see the brown on the map, that is the watershed for the Vermilion River, and some of those areas you see that are clusters of housing, that is Elko New Market and surrounding areas. So besides concern about the Vermilion River, there are calciferous fens. A fen is a rare type of feature that have plants that can only live in environments that are rich in calcium. And they're protected. So there's special laws about these fens that they need to be protected, like an endangered species type of thing. And there is concern that if the water is drawn down, it affects these fens, and then they're not going to get that groundwater that is high in the calcium that is allowing those plants to grow there.
So we talked a little bit before about the petition we did to the Environmental Quality Review Board, and that petition was asking for an EAW, and an EAW is an environmental assessment worksheet, and basically it assesses what the environmental impacts will be of a project, and you are allowed to do a discretionary petition to the as a citizen, as long as you get at least 400 signatures. Is it 400 or is it 100?
I think it was about 100.
I think it's 100, but we got 400. Anyways, and we asked them in that petition to study this project a little bit further. Unfortunately, they denied that petition, and they told us that it would be handled. They first assigned this to a regulatory government unit, which was the DNR. And it is the DNR that is responsible for issuing appropriation permits here in the state of Minnesota. So they gave the petition to the DNR to look at our request, that they look to see what the environmental impacts of this additional pumping would be. And the DNR denied our permit petition and agreed to look at the factors that we were asking to be looked at during the appropriations permit. So the city had made application for a permit with the DNR to modify their permit from 135 million gallons to 365 million gallons. And we began, after we found out the petition that to the Quality Review Board was denied, we began to advocate to the DNR. So we brought in the Sierra Club, MCEA, Freshwater, Trout Unlimited, all of the people that are heavily concerned about the same issues we are. We got them to write the DNR, we got them to pressure the DNR. So the citizens, we continued to call and write the DNR, and in April of 2023, the DNR agreed to a pump test. And at first, the city thought that they might just do a 2-week pump test, but we continued pressure on the DNR until they agreed to do a 6-week pump test to determine how this additional pumping would affect not only local surface features, but also our private wells. So a couple of things happened. This pump test happened in November of 2023. No one in the community was notified that this pump test was going to happen. But they ran it for 6 weeks. The first week and the last week were ramping up and ramping down, but the 4 weeks in between, they ran the water at the level of the permit, so they maxed out the amount of water that they could run. And it wasn't until November, or this happened in November and December, and it wasn't until the beginning of 2024 that we started to hear from local residents of degraded water quality. And you'll see a picture. This is actually a resident that had a full filtration system in her house, and she went to give her child a bath one day, and this is what her water looked like. And it is most likely manganese that is in her water. We received 68 complaints at the time of both degraded water and out of water complaints that happened during November, but subsequently hundreds more have come forward. Most of the complaints were increased manganese and iron. They had clogged filters, ruined piping, well pumps were fried because there was too much manganese in it. Entire filtration systems failed. There was ruined household appliances, toilets, etc., etc. This is a picture of a few people's filtration systems. The one on the right is with the black is manganese, and the one on the one on the left is manganese, and the one on the right is iron. So it's not only well and filtration systems that are an issue. Manganese has health impacts as well. It affects the nervous system, leading to memory, attention, and motor skill issues, particularly in infants. And the Minnesota Department of Health has guidance on it. 100 micrograms per liter or less for an infant. So oftentimes they say to mix infant formula. You'll see water that you can buy to mix infant formula. It's dangerous to mix it with well water if you don't know your manganese level. And for adults, those limits are closer to the 300 level. Now, with iron or manganese, it's very easy to see it in your well, but there are also concerns, a lot of times arsenic goes with these two contaminants. And arsenic is colorless and tasteless. And so there were lots of concerns that could also be an issue, and arsenic is a carcinogenic, and so it's a problem. So the DNR's response was...
Kathy has a question.
Yes. You can go two back. It was kind of hard to see,
Yes.
like the tub. Okay.
Yes, so this one?
Yeah, that was, I was just
Yeah.
curious.
That was in the paper too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's some of the press.
Yeah, sure. So the DNR responded by issuing the permit. They did consult with the Minnesota Department of Health. This was the first time ever that the DNR had consulted on a permit with the Minnesota Department of Health. But they did issue the permit, and they issued it with a quality and a quantity response plan that made the city responsible for addressing these problems and fixing our problems. So the city approved the project in 2024, and the response plan, basically, these response plans basically abdicated the DNR's responsibility to the city. So keep in mind that this was in June of 2024. Citizens immediately had to fix their filtration systems. Some people had to drill deeper wells. People had to drop their pipes lower. These were all things most of the citizens at the time didn't know that this pump test was happening. So it was sort of, you were on your own island in a bubble. And although all these problems were happening to your neighbor and your next door neighbor and beyond. So Finally, that was in 2024, finally in September of 2025, the city admits guilt, and they offered anyone who filed a claim $300.
Also, it says 2005.
Yeah, yes. Oh, it's
2025.
2025.
No, it says September 2005.
Yeah.
Oh,
We missed
sorry.
the digit, sorry.
That's-
I was just
that's-
making
No. So,
$300.
if you didn't want to take the $300, you could appeal the process. And just recently, probably 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, the first appeal went through. And these people had $5,000 worth of damage to their filtration system. They had to lower their pipe because they were going to be out of water. The city did pay for them to lower their pipe. However, the city basically put them on trial for 2 hours during a city council meeting and said that they would take 20% of the responsibility for their filtration system. So instead of $300, they got $1,000. So now the next step after that is whether or not you individually want to appeal that decision to the DNR. And I guess I'm just telling you these details to understand how cumbersome this is for private well owners. And so the current status, Niagara began pumping in 2025. They were using 16% of the city's water. As of February of 2026, they're using 53% of all the water that's being used. The residents continue to have problems with their wells. There are no real solutions. And Niagara is keen to do phase 2, which would increase their pumping, double it again by another $165 million. And we still don't have any real answers for the well owners. This picture was just sent to me 2 weeks ago from a local well owner. We did file an administrative appeal. Basically, we wanted to challenge the DNR's decision about issuing the permit. Unfortunately, it was dismissed on a technicality, a timing issue of the filing. However, it does not mean that we won't file another administrative appeal once the city goes to modify their permit again, because they do need to modify their permit in order to satisfy Niagara's next phase. We're also considering a class action lawsuit for damages to people's property. So the issues that we're concerned about are a couple of statutes. 103G 287, groundwater appropriations, basically states that the commissioner will not issue a permit if they determine that the groundwater use is sustainable to supply the needs of future generations and the proposed use will not harm ecosystems, degrade water, or reduce water levels beyond the reach of public water supply and private domestic wells. Well, that didn't happen. They issued the permit anyway. The city is now responsible, and they are not the experts on our aquifer. The other major statute that we're concerned with is the water allocation priorities. Obviously, first priority goes to the domestic water supply, and it excludes industrial and commercial. And because the city allowed the permit, because Niagara is getting their water through the city and the city's getting the permit from the DNR, it becomes difficult to, when the water gets mixed up in that municipal permit, the DNR looks at that as all domestic supply. They are not breaking out how much water is being used under that municipal permit for industrial and commercial uses and private use. It also doesn't consider, what wasn't considered is the first priority for the domestic well users. There are still major concerns for the local well owners in our community. And meanwhile, ironically, someone is bottling our water and selling it back to us so we have clean drinking water. So action steps, I'm gonna let Veda talk about this a little bit.
So one of the things that we worked on was education, helping residents, private well owners to learn about their wells. We put on 2 different well testing clinics, and some of the tests were free, some of them needed to be sent out to the lab. But it's important for you to know your water, and you want to test it where it first comes into your house and is untreated, so that you can see, is there a change maybe in manganese, is there a change in iron, is there a change in something when the city starts to pump more. So this is one of those things, if you're a private well owner, you may want to get your water tested. But you also want to test after treated, so any kind of a filtration system you have, and then test the water where, from your drinking tap, wherever you get that water, to see if it's doing the job it's supposed to do. Sometimes water softeners are putting too much salt in, sometimes your systems are not removing enough manganese or nitrate, or whatever is the thing that you're trying to take care of. So we thought it was really important for people to get this baseline and to understand their water. We had area residents brought in 327 water samples, and we sampled about 220 private wells then from 4 different counties. And we worked with volunteers, students too came and helped, and we analyzed samples for nitrates and chloride, and then we sent them off to the lab for them to get arsenic and manganese. Like Janelle said, you can't smell or see arsenic. The manganese you might notice, right? It's going to make that icky black look. And they're both natural to our soils, but what we're going to talk about in a minute here is there seems to be something with this increased pumping that made them mobile, that made more of it in our water supply than we had before they increased pumping, and that has created a lot of concern. The Dakota County, you're all in Dakota County here. I live in Scott. I think, Janelle, do you too? Scott?
Yep, Scott.
Yes, we're in Scott County. Dakota County and all counties actually recommend that you test your water for coliform bacteria every year, for nitrate every year, for arsenic at least once, for lead at least once, and for manganese. And again, we would recommend, especially if your city's changing their water habits, that you do this before and after to see if there's been a change. Otherwise, it's hard to prove that their pumping caused the issues, right? They might say, well, you didn't know what maybe you always had this manganese. And so Dakota County is offering free water testing if you live in Greenville Township, Castle Rock Township, Eureka, Waterford, Scioto, Randolph Township, or the city of Randolph, and Northfield. So it's important that you do this water testing. You're going to get a postcard. It says in late April. So has anyone gotten a postcard from the county? Excellent. Okay, and it has instructions on how to get your kit. So again, number one piece of advice is take advantage of that, get your water tested, and save your records. Valerie Neppel is the unit supervisor on groundwater protection from Dakota County. Both Janelle and I spoke to her a number of times. She's very supportive. Yep, she came to our water clinics. So if you're having issues, this would be a number you might want to note. Valerie Neppel. See somebody taking a picture. And we can come back to that. The other great thing about Dakota County is they've actually formed a 5-year plan to protect your groundwater. This is very important. It includes the water testing. It includes things about PFAS in your water now, right? In some areas, and how they'll need to watch for that and make sure water treatment is adequate. If all the data centers that are proposed in Dakota County are built, and did you hear about the mining operation proposed in Waterford? Right, where they want to draw down the aquifer or drain off the water so they can do limestone quarry. and Niagara goes to phase 2, your groundwater use here would increase 20 to 30% or more than 7 or 8 billion gallons a year. And the county states in this water plan that that is simply not sustainable. So it's very important that our county is planning, that our cities are planning, and that the DNR take this in account when they're doing these water permits.
So just a few other action steps. Keep the media involved. I know you guys are great at doing that, but keep them involved in regards to the water issues here as much as you can. Women's Press, NPR, The Trib, Minnesota Reformer, and local TV channels have been fabulous about covering this, so that would just be a suggestion. And then fight for legislation. I know Mo was with me earlier in the legislative session. We had hoped to get this legislation passed in the House and the Senate. The goal was to improve transparency on large volume commercial and industrial users of municipal water supplies and force these large companies to carry the financial liability for potential well interference. This bill would have required large water users to get their own permit. They would have been permitted under the city, but they would have been held to a higher standard. Priority would have been met. Unfortunately, given the current situation with our legislation right now, we're at sort of a gridlock, and this bill got gutted. But we will be coming back next year asking for the same thing. It would be a great place to start. Other things.
Oh, you want to scroll up? Mac user versus PC.
Yeah. Other things, the no NDAs, I still can't.
Here, I'll scroll for you.
Yeah, you scroll.
I'm glad I'm good for something.
Had you had NDAs with this? Did Niagara have non-disclosure agreements?
So that's an interesting question. We have, I can't confirm or I can't deny that they did. I've heard both. What they did, what I can say with 100% certainty is that Niagara met with the city council and a hand-selected group of citizens, and they asked them to not say anything. Now, some of those people may have signed NDAs and some of them did not, but we, in other words, they were told not to tell the community about the project. So, it's about the same as an NDA. Private well protections, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there are none for if you own a well in the state of Minnesota. You're 100% on your own for taking care of your well. Your water quality, the condition of your well, the water quantity is on you. So I would like to see legislation that puts in some protections for well owners. Regional management of our water systems, asking the DNR to be looking at these permits. Veda just talked about it. If all of these people in the area get these permits, we're talking about a 30% increase of water. That's not sustainable. It's not sustainable in Dakota County, and it's not sustainable in Scott County. Tax incentives for these industrial users that we're these billion-dollar companies. I'd like to see those go away. DNR permitting and regulating, some changes there on how these permits are issued would be great. And then public comment. There is no, at this point, there's no ability for you as a citizen to publicly comment on these appropriation permits. So these are some things that we'd like to see some legislation on. I know MCEA, Freshwater, a lot of organizations are working towards some of this legislation. But when it comes up, make sure to contact your legislators and let them know. You're okay. And just to wrap it up, some action steps to consider. You might want to explore a possibility of the discretionary EQB challenging and requesting an EAW for water use, and or if there's another way that you can force it. Go ahead.
Yeah, could you please tell us what the acronyms mean?
Yeah, it's up to
EQ,
you.
okay.
She was like,
Environmental
Oh.
quality and then the EAW.
Sure. The EQB is the Environmental Quality Review Board, and they have a petition process, and it's a discretionary, you can, as a citizen, file a discretionary petition asking them to review something. And an EAW would be an environmental assessment worksheet, and that document basically lays out the basic facts of a proposed project to determine if it has the potential for significant environmental effects and therefore requires an environmental impact statement. Now, ours was denied. It doesn't mean that yours would be denied. I think it's worth looking into whether or not you could do that. Do you have additional questions? Okay. And then the other thing that I highly recommend is that you find out where you're at, where your city is at with your water appropriations permit. I would attend every city council meeting, and I also noticed that Farmington has a water board that handles, looks like it handles most of your water infrastructure, and I would ask them if they've made application, applied for a modification of appropriation permit, ask them to explain the process and the timing. Does Farmington have an ordinance for large water users? What are the rates? Does the city have a water conservation plan? Is there a water use and service ordinance? What is the city's water supply plan? Do they use a significant water user agreement? How much water does the city currently have in its appropriation permits? And what will they ask for in their modification? If it is 2.9 million gallons a day, that's a billion gallons annually. And so as you're going to these meetings, I guess I would be asking every meeting for the city council to answer these questions. What is the plan? And then, of course, infrastructure, what infrastructure will be required, and where, if there are new wells, where will these wells be drilled? Is there going to be a need for an additional treatment facility, water towers? How much will it cost the city? Who will be paying for this? And then advocacy to the DNR for a multi-aquifer test, monitoring surface water like the stream for quantity and quality issues. And I would absolutely request that the DNR notify all well owners within a 5-mile radius of all the wells. And I would regularly file a Data Practices Act with the city and the DNR asking for information on this modification of this appropriations permit.
It took you 2 years to get anything
Three
from
years.
that.
3 years. It
That's-
took me 3 years to get information from the city and the DNR with my DPA, which was well done and over. And then continue to engage your community, farmers, and other water users. Be as active as you can. So, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
You know, we can share the slides also with you so that you can put it on your website or share whatever. So I saw some of you trying to get some notes.
I do have a question. So it's my understanding, since the city of Farmington does not have a water treatment plant, the water is treated at the well houses. So those of us that are in neighborhoods that we aren't personally using a well, we're using city water. How do we know what the condition of the water is when it's coming to that well house and whatever treatment is done at that well house then to get to our house, when you were talking about different locations of testing?
So if you're on city water, the city has to meet requirements. The Minnesota Department of Health will have requirements that they have to test, and they have to let you know if there's a change, right? If there's something to be nervous about, where you might need to use another water source for a time. So it's just if you're a private well owner. Private well owners, nobody's gonna tell you, nobody's gonna come knocking on your door, it's up to you. And if the city's well use or someone's well use interferes with yours and draws your well down, there is statute to say they have to help you dig a deeper well. There is statute to help with that. But in terms of monitoring the quality of that water, that's different. Again, as a private well owner, it's up to you to take advantage of that free testing and do it, often.
Me or her?
Yeah, I think you were first.
Yeah. My question is kind of related to what she asked. I'm wondering, are municipal water sources at risk for what is happening, or are their wells just so deep that they're not going to have a problem?
You saw that, remember the slide I showed you that said by 2040, communities may need to get water from another source. They won't be able to get enough. So it's not just private well owners, it's also these deeper wells that are going to start to have problems. If you live, like where I live in Scott County, the water that I'm drinking is from the time of the glaciers, 10, 12,000 years ago. Okay, it's not recharged quickly. It takes a long time for it to get down to the aquifer. And if you draw it out too fast, before, if it takes 100 years to get down there, it's going to be an issue. In parts of Dakota County, the groundwater goes through very quickly, which helps with recharge, but it also means contaminants get in from the surface much more easily. So it's kind of a trade-off. But again, the Met Council and others are saying, your own Dakota County plan here is saying that if we draw water out of this aquifer at the rate that is being proposed, you will not have enough. You'll have to find another source.
Why isn't there teeth in that, though? Why isn't there teeth in what the DNR is saying?
So the statute's there. That's what's frustrating to us, right? That's why we're at the legislature testifying and calling and writing the DNRs, because they do have the statute that says they need to make sure we have sustainable water. We think they need to do a better job of managing that.
So
Right
it's not
now,
policed. It's not, the statutes aren't policed, it sounds like.
it's true.
In some regards, that's true. They're not actually following what the statute says, and so it may have to be forced in a lawsuit. Go ahead.
So DNR, it sounds like they're not doing their job. And how do we hold them accountable? Because the boundary waters now, they're gonna do some mining up there, if that all continues to go through. And it's something that the DNR could end right now. How do we have an effect on the DNR?
We were both there for people not polluters, right?
Yep. There was a recent hearing, People Not Polluters, basically asking, calling out, giving examples of times that the agencies are not protecting the citizens of the state. And so we need to continue to contact our legislators. We need to continue to pressure them that we want this as citizens. We want the DNR to follow the legislation, the rules. But is it happening? No.
We also need legislation to force them to take better care.
And in some cases, the legislation is there.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there is like a centralized place to find events like that, because I don't usually hear about them until after the fact, like right now.
Yeah. Go ahead. The Environmental Caucus does have those events on their website. That's one place that you could look.
They're doing a forum tomorrow night with Kathy as one of the presenter, and also Hermantown. So dflec.org is where you'll find it.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned a class action lawsuit.
The library will close in 30 minutes. If you need a ride home, please call for one now. Please come to the service desk. Self-service hours will begin after closing. Again, the library will close in 30 minutes.
And
Hold on just a minute, they're gonna repeat it
La
in another language.
biblioteca cerrará en 30 minutos. Si necesita que le lleven a su casa, pídalo ahora. Si necesita ayuda, acuda al mostrador de servicio. Repetimos, la biblioteca cerrará en 30 minutos.
Okay,
Okay, yeah. So you mentioned a class action lawsuit which to me sounds like a great idea, but could you speak to what might be holding that up, or what the thinking is around that?
I think they were.
It's very difficult to sue a municipality and find reasons and/or an agency in the state of Minnesota. And so, in order to hold them accountable, so you have to have, there are very few laws that allow that. And so, it's been a slow process. And even if we do open a class action lawsuit, it's going to be a long road. So it's not a great solution, but at this point, it might be our only solution.
Takes money.
Yep, and money is the other issue, yep.
So Janelle, they want to move on.
Yep.
Okay. So it looks like the slides are not cooperating right now. We'll see if we can get that to work later, but I'm not sure. So I just want to thank you, Janelle and Veda. It's really good to have an understanding of how to prepare when a large water user or water users with really deep pockets eyes a community's precious resources for the taking. And so we're going to move on, and now our coalition chair, Kathy Johnson, will give an update on our lawsuits around the data center.
Before it gets started, I just want to reiterate that the DFL Environmental Caucus, it's a Zoom meeting, and I think we could maybe put it on our website if people want it.
Yeah.
You can do it from your home. It's at 6:30 tomorrow night, I believe. 6:30 or 7?
6:30.
6:30. And there's going to be speakers from Hermantown. It's going to be kind of informative, so it's out there. I also just want to mention to you that both our organization is really dedicated to educating educating the community about just what we were talking about tonight, water issues, the impact of a data center as it comes into our community. And we have another event coming up. This one's at the Lakeville Library on May 14th from 7 to 8:30. We're going to have Mo Fashami, who is a data center architect and very, very qualified person, as a guest speaker, as well as Dr. Carrie Jennings, who is a geologist who's a real expert on groundwater in this area. They're going to do a presentation. There's flyers for information about this on our back table. So I'm inviting you to that. It's, again, a really important. I was really glad and interested when you were talking about the trial stream. That's one of the impacts. And wow, Janelle and Veda, you did such a good job about Elko's water usage. And large-scale water use is a big problem, and it's an issue that we need all to be concerned about. And as you all know, Minnesotans have a lifestyle, which is the envy of people in many, many places. Our state is cleaner than most, and we have the most amazing natural resources, and it's a great place to live and raise a family. Quality of life in Minnesota is the reason many people come here. It's the reason they stay, but right now it's under attack. As the well-known phrase accurately states, the water and earth are not ours. We are borrowing it from our children. Predatory developers are not borrowing. They are taking. And they are taking it all from us and the future generations, where ample water, clean air, clean skies, and the sound of wildlife used to be. They will leave us bankrupt. There are currently no active protections for Minnesota citizens in the legislature or the executive branch from the impact of hyperscale data centers, specifically in Farmington, brought on by the local governing body, which refuses to listen to its constituents. All that is left for us is the judiciary, where this hyperscale data center proposal sits in limbo, awaiting the outcome of our trial. Please note that the original trial date, scheduled for October of 26, has now been moved to May of 2027. So we have a little over a year to get this lawsuit ready to present to a jury. For the last 2 years, the Coalition for Responsible Data Center Development members have been advocating for the preservation of the community, our homes and yours, and the abundance surrounding natural resources, the quality of life we all share. And we have been driven by our knowledge and facts that we have found from researching from multiple communities across the United States and in multiple pieces of literature. Life has changed for people living in other parts of the country where data centers, hyperscalers, have come in. The coalition has made connections with people in other communities, and we know that Farmington is set to become just like their communities. If we do nothing about this, these are the facts that Farmington officials refuse to acknowledge. The discovery phase is where we currently are in our lawsuit, and it's typically the most expensive part of a civil lawsuit because it involves intensive, time-consuming information exchange. It often accounts for 40 to 90% of the total cost of litigation, and it requires extensive attorney time reviewing thousands of documents, preparing depositions, and managing electronic data. Depositions, taking and defending depositions, involves high costs because the attorney preparation time, daily rates for court reporters, the expense of creating transcripts, and it can range between $5,000 and $25,000 in legal fees. Expert witnesses. Complex cases like these often require expert witnesses to review evidence and testify in trial, with fees for reports and depositions ranging anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000. Discovery disputes. If the parties can't agree on what information must be shared, the attorneys file motions to compel or protective orders, with each motion costing between $5,000 and $25,000 more in legal fees. Because discovery is designed to ensure that there are no surprises at trial, it is a massive and often multi-month process requiring gathering, reviewing, producing a high volume of information, and strategizing on how to best use that information in the lawsuit. With our lawsuit, 100% this project will go forward if we don't sue. If we give up this lawsuit, 100%, this project is going to go forward. But together, we are not defeated. Because we are the furthest along of any developer-led project in the state of Minnesota, our win will be impact litigation. It will set precedent for not only Farmington and the life we love in Farmington, but also for other cities as well. As we enter this discovery phase, we're at a crossroads. I'm asking you about your worldview. Do you want to be idle and just let big tech developers determine what the life in our city is going to look like? We've already raised $100,000 in the last 2 years. Ourselves, our supporters in our community. That's the good news. But we've spent about 95% of that over the last 2 years. And litigation costs are, as you can see, are high. We can do that much again in this coming year if we as a community stand together. If we broaden the base of those who know that hyperscale data centers are incompatible with this site and do not belong anywhere near residential areas and do not belong anywhere near the Vermilion River, we can raise that money. Remember the village story of Stone Soup? We can be like those villagers in Stone Soup who came together, each contributing whatever they could to the pot, and the result at the end was a hearty soup that the entire village came together to enjoy. We can show that working together for the greater good accomplishes more than any one person can do or accomplish alone. The coalition's lawsuit is not funded by people with deep pockets. It's funded by regular people, just like you and me. And we are currently in that most expensive phase of our lawsuit. So tonight I'm asking you, to consider your worldview and what you value about life here in this community, in this region, and in this state. I know what my choice is, and I know what my family's choice is, and I know that what I choose has been for the same as so many in our community already. I'm asking you to become part of that broad base and contribute to our legal fund. If you have contributed in the past, thank you. But please consider donating again so that we can take this lawsuit to the finish line and send a message to big tech developers and naive local governing units about what we cherish most in our community. Stand together and be part of that broad base by donating to our legal fund, and be just like those villagers who achieve more collectively than what was even imaginable. Be a part of the win, which we can win and make it a win for all of us. Donation forms are on the back table, and we are both a 501c3 and a 501c4 arm of the same organization. And as you look at them, if you see one icon on it, that's a 501c3. And if you see an icon on a QR code, that's a 501c4. But we would appreciate if you would consider that, picking up the forms and donating, because we do need the money for our legal fund. There's also information brochures. We also have the trout stream brochures back there. Some informational brochures that were put together by a coalition of nonprofits, so there's plenty of information and plenty of fresh water. Okay, can we continue with some Q&A? I can do that if you want me to.
C3, C4.
The difference between the 501c3 and the 501c4.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
You can ask questions of either, anybody, either.
Let me answer the question from the floor. The difference between a 501c3 and a 501c4. The 501c3 is an environmentally based teaching and outreach type of organization. Any funding that is given to that can be used for the environmental portions of our lawsuit and for community outreach, and it is tax deductible. The 501c4 allows us to also fund legal, but we have less restrictions. It can fund any part of our lawsuit, and it can allow us to lobby the legislature. It is not tax deductible, so you have to think about whether or not you itemize your taxes if you want to donate. And 501c4 is not taxable deductible, but the C3 is. Thank you.
Okay. We've got 2 microphones here. What I would tell you, please, is in order for them to work together, it's kind of like you practically have to eat the microphone, and from the top, not from the side. Okay? Question back here. I live up by Cedar and Dodge, so I'm not even close to the data center, but this makes a huge difference for everybody in our community. Tonight, I will match the first $1,000 that's contributed tonight, either through Venmo, PayPal, or cash or check. I'll match the second 1,000. I thought
Okay, honey. Love it.
I don't live here. I live in Minneapolis, but I have been involved in some fights trying to get the MPCA to do its job and DNR to do its job. Boundary Waters has been a big one I'm part of. So I'm kind of wondering about official reporting of the test of the waters, of the well waters. I'm wondering, because I've seen some cases in the past where unofficial citizen science is not accepted by the MPCA or the DNR as official
The
data.
library will close in 15 minutes. Please check out material and complete computer work and printing. If you are a self-service customer planning to stay after close, please be sure to swipe your access card outside the front entrance. The library will close in 15 minutes.
The water testing that we had done was in
La
a certified
biblioteca
lab.
cerrará en 15 minutos. Tome prestado el material y completa el trabajo con el ordenador y la impresión. Si usted es un usuario de autoservicio
I
que
love
planea
libraries.
quedarse después del cierre, asegúrese de pasar su tarjeta de acceso fuera de la entrada principal. La biblioteca cerrará en 15 minutos.
So if you have your water tested with a county, it's a accredited lab, and those results will hold up in court. The chloride testing was just screening. It was not certified, but we sent the manganese and the arsenic, correct? Manganese and arsenic were certified lab. So now the residents that got that done have those results.
So when we're talking about the DNR bypassing their own statutes and legislation, and companies coming in and going ahead with starting to build or starting to prepare areas for building, and we're looking at our options as citizens. And it sounds like one of our only options is to go with the judicial route and file these lawsuits and, get our petitions going and continue to be that voice for our communities. I'm wondering if there is a physical route we can go as well as citizens and citizen advocates. Like, is there any room for us to show up at these potential sites and just be that barrier while we're trying to save our, that does come to mind because it is so frustrating to continue to get bypassed when they aren't even following their own rules and laws that keep us safe.
I remember Veda telling me that she needed to retire from school before we changed ourselves to the fence. Because we were going to get arrested. Showing up at the legislation is huge. Staying in contact, contacting the DNR, writing the DNR. The Sierra Club does a great job. MCEA does a great job. These are nonprofits. Freshwater, Trout Unlimited, staying in contact. They hold events. The Sierra Club. They hold events continuously throughout the year. Constantly there's something going on. That's one way. I understand what you're saying. It was extremely disappointing. I'm going to say from my standpoint, I got involved as an activist, and I just assumed that the DNR was going to protect us, and that's not what happened. And we're still having issues. And I'll also tell you another piece of information. I finally got my Data Practices Act about a month ago. I had put it in 3 years ago to the DNR. They finally gave it to me. And inside of that Data Practices Act, there were notes from a meeting in the fall of 2025, right after the city had admitted that they probably caused the problems in our wells and that they didn't know if it was going to continue in the future. It was notes from the executives at Niagara speaking with the commissioners at the DNR, finding out how they could get around having to do a pump test and additional testing in the future. It's like a kick in the teeth.
They don't care about us.
It's a sad situation. And so I wish I could say to you, I have found a way. I get up every day. I'm motivated every day to keep fighting, and I will keep fighting. so motivated that I decided to go back to get my master's in public policy.
And I need to add to that, who is representing you matters. Janelle was there, Mo was there testifying before the legislature to say, we need these large water users to get their own permit. It's more difficult for them than to go through the city. So you have in the room tonight Mark Legvold. Do you know Mark? Somebody that understands how important water is as a farmer, right? If his fields can't get that water from just beneath the surface, he's not going to have a good crop. So you need to really look at who you're electing to office and how they're voting. Get involved. It does make a difference. And it's hard to do it all. You guys meeting here and learning about things tonight, it's wonderful, and you've done a great job getting publicity. Keep it up. And again, we're with you.
I'd like to add just two quick comments. Janelle and I were testifying and mentioning how the city let us down and caused water issues. And one of the representatives said, as they were commenting, he said, well, I think we should let the cities handle this. They know their people better. And this was no more than 5-10 minutes after we had testified that in the same session. Another example, and how important it is to stay involved and keep track of what's going on. There is a data center plan for North Mankato that would tap the water. They want to get the water from Hinkley Aquifer, which the statute, state statute says that water is only for residential use. And it even specifies you cannot use it for commercial or business use. And that was specified in the project AUAR. So when DNR went to them and said, sorry, you got to find another water source, the response to DNR was, oh, we know. So what our plan is to go and lobby the legislator to change the statute.
Oh.
I mean, just think about the audacity of the person that is, whoever that is. I don't know if it's the city or it's the project owner. I believe city is the RGU for that. To come back and say, we don't like what the law says, we're going to lobby to change the law. So we can use that limited water quantity that is reserved for residential use to take it and give it to the data center. So, you know, if you're not involved and not looking at these things, yes, things like this can happen. So as you said, it is very important to stay involved.
I'd like to add one thing about the legislature. I was basically a witness. I grew up with Kathy when she testified. When I sit back there and watch, I would see these legislatures on their phone doing all kinds of work or whatever. The other paid lobbyists and the corporate lobbyists are paid big bucks, a lot more than environmental lobbyists. But those people who are talking to them every single day and trying to spew their thoughts or industry thoughts, they kind of ignored them. Oh, what have they got to say today? But when Kathy got up to speak, they put their phones down and listened because it was a new voice. They aren't used to hearing from the constituents. You need to talk to your legislatures. You need to write your legislatures. That's the best chance we have. They have to hear from you, the people.
I don't know how many people are up for re-election on the city council, but that's a place to start.
Yep.
Get them out, get them out, get them out.
Part of the problem in our area is that the majority of the people that are having problems live in the township. And so we can't even vote. We can't even vote for the city council.
Well, and that's true for me too, because I'm in the other part of Farmington where
Yes.
I don't get to vote for this mess here.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean I'm stuck with my sister.
Yeah.
We will close in 5 minutes. If you are not a self-service customer, this is your last call for checkout.
Good.
Wait a minute, they're gonna speak another language.
La biblioteca cerrará en 5 minutos. Si no es un usuario de autoservicio, esta es su última llamada para retirarse.
And then don't stop at city council. Ask every person you're gonna vote for in this coming election what their opinion is on the water usage, on data centers, on Niagara, on all of it. Find that out, make an educated choice when you select who you're gonna vote for.
That also goes for the board, the Dakota Electric Board. We've got people that are data center fans on the board, so there are lots of conflicts of interest to pay attention to. It just kind of goes across the spectrum. So Dakota County Board, commissioners, all of it.
I just wanted to add that I'm a member of the coalition and have gotten to meet a lot of my great neighbors through this fight. And since we started this about 2 years ago, our Facebook page has really grown. We were one of the first grassroots organizations, I think, to get a website and to get on social media. So we have people private messaging us and emailing our website, help, I've got 3 kids, I'm living near a big data center, what do I do? And they're asking us from Illinois, Georgia, Virginia, whatever. So our lobbying team up at the state has partnered with about 20 different organizations in the state of Minnesota. We've held 2 successful rallies, and now we're working with Pine Island, Hermantown, Monticello, Rosemont, Apple Valley, and now there's other towns in the nearby area that are coming to us to saying, help, we need to know how to organize, we know how to fight. So the point I want to make is we're all in this together, we're all fighting it together, and it's just mind-boggling when you think about how this affects everybody across the United States. And I wanted to mention too that if you go home tonight and decide you want to give, we have PayPal and Venmo, and there's sheets back here, right, that have those?
Venmo's not on here, but you can get it from our website if you want to Venmo instead.
GoFundMe, I think.
Oh, yes, excuse me, GoFundMe. And that's on our website or our coalition Facebook page. Thanks.
Does the delay of the court date delay construction? And part 2, if it doesn't, is there thinking about getting an injunction?
Injunction is, I'm not the legal expert, but as I understand it, we need to have them, we need to be able to prove imminent environmental damage before we can get an injunction. And so far it's not imminent. And we think there's some gamesmanship going on, but that's my opinion. And an injunction is not just something that judges hand out like, candy on Halloween. The bar's pretty high. What was the first part of your question?
Oh, if the delay of the court date will delay construction.
Well, there's certain things that they have said at the last city council meeting that Tract is going to do. They own the golf course now. They bought it out right from the owners. So they said they are going to tear down the old clubhouse and start building the berms, moving the earth to build the berms and do some planting around the perimeters. But they don't have a permit to do that. To put it in perspective, my husband and I put in a pole barn 3 years ago. And we had to build a retaining wall around it to have the right area to build this. So we're in the middle of having our retaining wall built, and up comes the building inspector asking us, where's our permitting to move this earth and build a retaining wall for a pole barn? And luckily we had a contractor who was sharp enough that he had taken care of the correct paperwork. We had no problems. But in what world do I have to get a permit to build a pole barn And a developer with big bucks can come in and build berms around 150-acre property, moving massive amounts of soil and tearing down structures, but doesn't need a permit. You know, and those are the kinds of things that.
The library is now closed. If you are not a self-service access card holder, please exit now.
Those are the kind of things.
Hold on.
La biblioteca ya está cerrada. Si no es titular de una tarjeta de acceso de autoservicio, retírese ahora.
Those are the kind of things that just keep me up at night. Because I just think, I'm a middle child in my family. And there's those of you that are middle children in your family can relate to this. No one understands, like a middle child, the statement, that's not fair.
Exactly. Hey,
And
youngest.
this simply isn't fair. You know, where's the equity in this? So. There's someone before you.
Okay. This question is pretty simple. Can you hear?
No, turn close to your mouth like you
Oh, like that, okay. Now, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My questions are kind of simple. Are these slides available to us if you have our email
Yes.
address? Are they going to be posted on the website or?
I can get it to Kathy and she can share however she wishes.
Awesome. And then I noticed have you recorded all of this meeting and that will also be posted for those who can come?
Yeah.
On the coalition website?
Probably by Friday,
Yeah, on our website.
Yeah, on our website.
We'll put it on the website and we'll put a link on our Facebook as well.
Great, thank you so much.
If we wanted to contact the DNR,
No, we have two separate.
what area would we contact? What approach do we take? I don't feel like I'm well educated in how all the different water systems work. So how would we start, or who would we talk to?
Yeah, we'll look it up and write it on the board. So keep going.
Regarding the DNR, there is a gentleman, regarding DNR, there is a gentleman, Jack Gleason,
Yes.
that is involved in that process, and he has worked with Farmington, try to get them to navigate some of the water challenges. So he is the right person to reach out to. And then there is another person that is more of a communication channel with Farmington, Melissa Collins. Her name and email address is in the Farmington AUAR for the technology part. So you can look that up. If you need that, we could either put it on our website or reach out to us and we will forward you that information.
And I would add, Jason Meckel is Jack Gleason's boss, and so he's sort of, he's the person that's testifying always, and I believe his boss, his position used to be Katie Smith, and I believe there's someone new in that position, so.
What area of the DNR do they represent? What department?
Groundwater resources or groundwater appropriations would be where you'd look. It's difficult to find their information and how they're layered on their website. It's not exactly clear, so.
How about Kate Smith?
Yeah, Kate Smith is no longer in that job.
Okay. I'm just looking at our slides.
Do you want to go ahead with your question?
I wanted to say that we, maybe a lot of people here are familiar with Mark Legvold, who's running to be our senator. But there was a fellow here earlier. He had to go home and take care of his kids, but he's running to be our House rep. He'll be running against Roach. And his name is Ed Fellows, and you'll be hearing more about him. We're going to be going to your door and talking about him, but he is in the process of getting endorsed by the Friends of the Boundary Waters, so that gives you a little taste of where he's looking for his endorsements. Ed Fellows.
I just wanted to make one comment of something that really alarmed me recently. I was aware that there were other data centers that were looking to come to the area. Remember that the one in Farmington at the former Fountain Valley Golf Course will be one of the largest in the nation.
Welcome to
Now,
service hours. Enjoy this extra time to utilize our resources. Please remember to be respectful of the space and other customers. Self-service hours will end at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Bienvenido. Disfrute de este tiempo adicional para utilizar nuestros recursos y recuerde ser respetuoso con el espacio y con los demás usuarios. El horario de autoservicio finalizará a las 11.
Okay, what I wanted to mention, and the most alarming thing, remember that our lawsuit is one of the first, and it will set precedent. Okay, the second thing though is if it sets precedent, currently there are 9 more in the, by Rochester, Pineland, yes, in the Pine Island area alone, 9 more, the size of the one, or very close to the size of the one in Farmington, that's proposed for Farmington. So there's no way we'll have enough water. This is a fight that we really need to put everything that we can into it in order to make the changes that we need.
So one of the emails at the DNR, I'm sorry, there's no whiteboard marker for me to write it on the board, but it's kind of simple. It's just Joe.Richter. And Richter is RICHTER at state.mn.us. That would be someone from the DNR who is the groundwater hydrologist and involved with water appropriation permits. So he would be a good person to write to.
Will you repeat that again?
Yes.
Joe Richter.
Joe Richter. Again, he's with the DNR and a groundwater hydrologist. That means he works with water and geology. His phone number is 651-259-5877. And his email, Joe, dot Richter, RICHTER, at state.mn.us.
Why don't you go ahead and wrap it up?
You know, I'm going to hang around for a while longer, and a bunch of us are. You're welcome to look. The photos are here, are just a great visual to let you know about the light pollution that happens. These are taken, each one has a symbol. This is Meta in Rosemont. Each one has a symbol that lets you know how many feet away you are. And with Fountain Valley, I think we kiss goodbye to our dark night skies if this comes in. So we'll be here. If you want to just circulate and look at the pictures and come up and ask us questions informally, you're welcome to do that.
And want to put their chair back?
And, oh, yeah. Can we get, if you don't mind, can you get out the chair rack? It would be really helpful to us if everybody put their own chair rack.
Thank you so much for coming.
And yes, thank you. It's really, really encouraging to see so many interesting community members. Thank you.